We welcome you to this forum featuring the candidates who are running in District 43 for state senator and also our unopposed candidates for state representatives for House District 43A and 43B. My name is Patsy Green, and I am the president of League of Women Voters, Crystal, New Hope, East Plymouth, Robbinsdale. The League of Women Voters sponsors candidate forums to provide the public with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to members of the public. League of Women Voters is proud of its history of citizen education for our communities and to help voters make informed decisions in local elections. The League is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates and not those of League of Women Voters. Questions tonight should relate to the office of legislator. Questions for the candidates are from the audience here tonight and from citizens who have emailed them to our League or left a message through the League voicemail. We do not accept verbal questions from the floor. All question writers are kept anonymous and become the property of the League. Not the question writers, just the questions become property of the League. Wearing face masks is a personal choice for both candidates and audience members. We wish to thank our moderator tonight for this forum, Peggy Kavam, a member of the League of Women Voters of Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, and Hopkins. Peggy.
Welcome to the forum for state senator in the newly named District 43. The first part of our forum will take place until 7:40 p.m. with the two state senate candidates. The candidates are Ann Rest, member of the DFL party currently serving this district in the Senate, and Andrew Schuler, a member of the Legal Marijuana Now party. We have asked them for an opening statement telling you why each would like to serve and some qualifications and experience each brings to District 43. Candidates, there's a timer who will notify you of the time remaining of 1 minute, 30 seconds, and stop intervals. You may finish your sentence after the stop sign. Candidate Rest, would you present your opening statement now of up to 3 minutes?
Thank you very much. First of all, thanks to the League of Women Voters once again for sponsoring these forums for candidates to present their views to the public and to constituents. I really am very appreciative of it. I also want to express my appreciation for my opponent, Mr. Schuler. He has a wonderful history of supporting the environment in particular, and I congratulated him on that, and we share a number of similar views on very important issues. My work in the legislature involves sitting on the tax committee. I'm the lead Democrat, and on the housing committee and on the rules committee. I'm a member of several legislative commissions, the Audit Commission, the Preservation Commission, the Great Lakes Commission, and the Tax Expenditure Commission. I'm a retired tax accountant. I'm a former English teacher in the Robbinsdale schools, and our community has been my home since 1970. Our communities need experienced and effective legislators to focus on sound policies and wise investments, including, most recently, tax relief for Minnesota families and seniors. We have a huge budget surplus, and we need to distribute those resources in a thoughtful and smart way. I will work during these challenging times to protect abortion rights, to advocate for school children and adequate funding, to fight against climate change, to support transit, to promote public safety, and to insist on diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of our lives together. I believe in hope and opportunity, in responsibility and accountability. I'm Ann Rest, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, candidate Schuler, would you like to present your opening statement of up to 3 minutes?
if I've learned anything from the Donald Trump administration, it's that Americans love hats. Get it? It's a house divided. It says, I'm their leader, which way do they go? But seriously, I don't want to waste anyone's time, which is why I almost didn't accept tonight's invitation to the League of Women Voters, because I'll be a monkey's uncle if I win this election, let's be honest. Having said that, if there's some sea change in voting habits, I do apologize in advance to my nieces and nephews. I don't think they're monkeys. My family, the Schuler family, is at least on the level of super chimpanzee. So not only will I probably never be heard from again after this election, but maybe I think being here is actually doing the cause a disfavor, because not because I think I'm gonna quote unquote spoil the election. There's only two of us, but I don't think we live in a democracy, to be frank. I don't think you can call something a winner takes all system democratic. So as cool as re-legalizing marijuana is, the one thing I'd like to see most is a modern movement towards proportional representation, preferably on a local state level in the House, which at times has gained traction in our country's history, but I won't bore you with those examples. Suffice to say that I envision a Minnesota House where representatives are elected in proportion to the vote. I hope that makes sense. It's in a nutshell, 10% of the vote gets 10% of the seats. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but I do believe that would simply require a change in state statute, whereas updating Senate elections would require a constitutional amendment. In essence, Minnesota would have the best of both worlds: an upper house, which will more or less remain as an exclusive club for protecting the interests of the two major parties, and a lower house, which can more easily shift with the tides of the times and better reflect the voice of the people. Thank you.
All right, thank you. It is now time for questions that reflect the concerns of the citizens. We ask the candidates for up to 1-minute responses. Questions will be asked in alternating order. We will begin with candidate Schuler. So jumping right in, none of the questions are easy ones. Minnesota now has a $9 billion tax surplus. What are your recommendations for the surplus, and please explain?
Fairly simple. I think we should focus on education, and I guess specifically I'd like to see less bigger schools and more smaller schools, so that there's not so many children and so few teachers. And I guess transportation, I'd like to get away from our fossil fuels as much as possible, as soon as possible.
Thank you. Candidate Rest?
Well, thank you. I certainly agree that one of our major responsibilities is teaching the children and providing adequate funding for their education. I'm not at all certain that when January comes that we are going to have a $9 billion surplus at this point. At any time, it's the job of the legislature in the beginning of the biennium to arrive at a balanced budget, and that is going to be a number one priority as we look at the things that we value to distribute our resources on. And many voices need to be heard, and I'm sure they will be, to direct the legislature and the governor on how those resources are going to be spent or saved.
Thank you. Our next question will start with candidate Rest. The median home value in New Hope is approximately $325,000. With the bull market reducing the homestead property tax exclusion, what are your thoughts on evaluating the property tax system that we have?
Well, I really do appreciate that question, and thank you. I do have legislation that's pending in the tax bill that we weren't able to pass that readjusts the market value exclusion that homeowners currently enjoy up to a certain point. As the home increases in value, there's less and less of an exclusion, but we haven't changed that for 12 years, 10 years, I guess. 2012 is when we initiated it, and that needs to be revisited. And we had a plan in the tax bill that the Republicans would not bring to the floor to vote on that would have brought a lot of relief to homeowners in cities like New Hope and the rest of Senate District 43. So I hope we can go back and examine that and improve that part of state law.
Thank you. Candidate Schuler.
I'm a relatively new homeowner, so first I want to thank my representative for sending me an email when I first moved in, reminding me about the property tax rebates, which I had no idea even existed. So that was cool. I could have used that extra $1,000 or whatever it was. You know, yeah, more homeowners need that type of relief, and there's going to be these with the Republicans and Democrats working alone in the legislature, there's only going to be gridlock. I don't know how more else to say about that. So we need proportional representation if we're ever going to get this stuff across.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll start with candidate Schuler. The question is, what measures would you support to improve and secure elections and voting in Minnesota?
I'm really open-minded to any types of upgrades to our elections. I guess one that comes to my mind off the top, just an idea, 24-hour voting, drive-through. I don't know, 365 days a year. Let's see, I know some people want like an ID or whatever, but I think you already need to vouch for yourself. So, automatic registration, that should happen. I'd say it should be lowered to 16. I think I'm getting a little off topic here, but there's so much to say about elections. And obviously and I'll sound like a broken record forever, so you might as well just give me proportional representation. Because, with more parties in the House, there would be more checks and balances. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Rest.
Thank you. Well, I believe that Minnesota has one of the best voting systems in the country. And I do think that there are some improvements that can be made, and I agree with Andy on automatic voter registration rather than, and it should be opt-out rather than opt-in on things like a driver's license. I'm not convinced of the value of proportional representation, but I am a strong supporter of ranked choice voting. And I think that particularly in some of our nonpartisan races, that could be a way of really making sure that people, when they are elected, have the support of their voters and their constituents. It's rather it's a pretty simple system actually, but it does get you to 50%, and I wouldn't change the voting age from 18.
Thank you. On to a new question, and we'll be starting with candidate Rest. Which one issue do you think is most important to work on with legislators across the aisle?
Tax policy. Interestingly enough, and maybe counterintuitively, the Senate Tax Committee is perhaps the least partisan committee that operates in the Senate. We often have Democrats have Republicans on their bills, and Republicans have Democrats on their bills. The conference committees always have members of both parties on it. Our bills get heard, and and they become part of the overall tax bill. And I think that's because we do look beyond the partisanship that comes in other committees, and that's one of the reasons why I chose to serve on the tax committee, not only my background, but also because of the compromises that we find and accomplish.
Thank you. Candidate Schuler.
Could you repeat that question, please?
Sure, anytime. Just ask me if you need it repeated. Which one issue do you think is most important to work on with legislators across the aisle?
Oh, I think the most important thing that Democrats and Republicans can work together on is they should collude to make sure that it's nearly impossible for third parties to get on the ballot. And, they should definitely support a winner-takes-all system since they're winning. Europe had a winner-take-all system once. I think I'm hesitant to invoke fascism on the first date, but I think the only advantage we have, if you can call it that, is this cold civil war that we've had for over 150 years. That has given us two parties instead of one, but even within that two-party system, there's been a one-party system a lot of the time. And besides, in 1912, even the Progressive Party did get second place, but the old guard still had the nerve to call TR a spoiler. You do the math. I guess to quote Bart Simpson, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I don't know. I don't know how to tell the Democrats, Republicans what else they can work together on.
Okay. Our next question will start with candidate Schuler. It's a little bit long, but I think you will understand it pretty easily. Given the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding Roe v. Wade, state legislatures may enact new laws regarding women's reproductive health issues. What measures, if any, do you think the Minnesota legislature should enact regarding women's reproductive health and abortion laws?
They should keep their laws out of our bodies.
That's it?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Candidate Rest.
Thank you. I think we are fortunate in Minnesota. Women, people who can get pregnant in Minnesota, are fortunate that our Supreme Court had a ruling, and now I'm losing the name of the case right now, but that made the right to choose an abortion as part of reproductive health, made it constitutionally settled law, and I think we mean settled law in Minnesota. Recently, court overturned some of the restrictions in Minnesota's laws regarding abortion, like requiring parents of minors to have a say in that decision, and we have that's been overturned, and I think it's the right thing.
Thank you. So our next question will start with candidate Rest, and this question is also long, and it cites some figures that I don't know if they're accurate or not, so we'll just go with how it's written, and if you can correct anything, feel free to do that as well. So last year, Minnesota collected more than $720 million in tobacco taxes and settlement fees, and less than 2%, $11.7 million, was spent on tobacco prevention efforts. Do you support funding to prevent youth tobacco addiction, help adults quit, etc., thus reducing the costs borne by residents and businesses in the community?
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that question too, because I was the author of the original legislation to restrict youth access to tobacco that our cities have been enjoying now for 25 years, having the the city be the final say-so, with the state law being the floor and the cities being able to have stronger laws. It's very difficult to boil down where money goes with regard to the taxes that are collected from a specific activity, but go into a general fund. If that was not the case, it would be called a fee. And so that's $720 million, the money that we pay for our car registrations. The latter is specific. The former goes into the general fund, and decisions are made on the distribution of those funds.
Thank you. Candidate Schuler.
I would support non-smoking initiatives, like, they have in some countries where there's like pictures of black lungs and things on cigarette packs, something simple like that. I smoked for like 20 years, and the reason I quit was because I had a baby, and I didn't want to smell like cigarettes in front of her. But you can't give everyone a baby. So I don't know, but yeah, I support anything to get people to quit smoking, but I don't support laws that would restrict those freedoms that they have to smoke. Like, I don't want to punish anyone, especially people who have it rough enough to the point where they want to smoke their lives away. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Next, we'll be starting with candidate Schuler, and the question is, what should Minnesota's spending priorities be in the next biennium?
I'd like to see gondolas. I think they're urban gondolas, right? Like they have at the state fair. I think we should just build those everywhere. That's it. I just think that'd be really cool. Instead of cars, like gondolas. They go over lakes, they go over mountains, and they're all year round, and they're electric. They're fun. I guess if you're afraid of heights, it wouldn't be that great. And then, we can probably like give some money back to the taxpayers. I think that'd be cool. Just if I got like a check in the mail one day. Oh, free marijuana too. Why not?
Well,
Thank you. Candidate Rest.
there aren't going to be gondolas everywhere, I can assure you.
Not with that attitude.
I do appreciate the creativity that Andy brings to this discussion. I really do, and I think the people here in the council chambers do as well. We are in a crisis in education right now, brought on by the pandemic. Our children are not up to where they should be, and we need to really, really heavily invest in public education, and not just K-12, but also in higher education, in attracting people to become teachers. We need more teachers, and that would be my first priority.
Thank you. Next, we'll start with candidate Rest. What kinds of policies, if any, will you pursue to promote social and racial justice in our community?
Well, there is a three-word phrase that I think captures what our goals should be: diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I am really encouraged that our city governments, one way or another, not prescribed, not one way fits everybody, seem to have taken that very, very seriously. And the thing about it is that it's not always a top-down thing. It's got to be in the community that prizes those values as we get along with our neighbors. And we have to know who our neighbors are. We have to value them, and I think that's the way forward for us, starting locally.
Thank you. Candidate Schuler.
Please repeat the question.
Sure. What kind of policies, if any, will you pursue to promote social and racial justice in our community?
Well, there's a bunch, but I guess one thing that comes to mind is I'd like to see a state bank. Have you guys ever heard of that? It's like North Dakota is the only state in the union that has one. It'd be cool if Minnesota had one of their own, and they can like give out loans with like minimum interest rates and for like people to buy houses and things, and that's like a whole nother category. But I guess another thing would be like just to try to eliminate this racial and economic segregation that is pretty blatant. My street has like $1 million house on one end, and then my house, which is like $100,000 or something. So I think more neighborhoods should just look like that. There's a lot to be said there. I can't quite think of it all in 30 seconds.
Thank you. We're on our last question already, so we'll start with candidate Schuler. What measures would you support to address increased violence in our community?
To decrease violence? Man, I just saw this video of like some kids running out of a school bus because they heard gunshots, and like, it just broke my heart. Especially now that I have a 4-year-old and we're having another baby in like a month. So we gotta do something. We can't just say more guns or like that last man standing. What? But I don't know. Like, you hear all these people talk about gun control, but you never hear anyone mention bulletproof vests, because I feel like that's the only thing that could really control being shot at by a gun. But then I know there's other types of violence too. You can stab somebody with a spoon. It's just not very popular amongst mass murderers, I guess. Man, there's a lot to be said with all these questions. More outreach towards youth. You got to teach people when they're young that there's better ways to solve your differences than you got to control your anger. I'm sorry, I think my time is up.
Thank you. Candidate Rest.
Well, thank you. I agree with Andy. I think reaching out to young people in our communities is and providing role models for them, both in school and in the community, that doesn't see violence as the first stop for solving our problems. Certainly, I would also support ordinances, state laws that would result in fewer guns in our community. I can't think of anyone who reasonably would say that we don't have enough guns in our community, and we need fewer guns, and we need to control anger. We see too much road rage with people who are frustrated, and we need to again reach out to our neighbors and get to know them.
Thank you. Candidates will now have 1 minute for a closing statement, and we will begin with candidate Schuler.
There is no road rage with the urban gondola. There's no road construction. I could go on and on how great gondolas are. So just vote Schuler for Minnesota Senate District, formerly known as 45, or don't.
Candidate Rest, now your closing statement.
Well, thank you so much. Again, I want to thank, on behalf of both of us, the League for undertaking this service, this voter service for the people of Minnesota and our communities. I love my job. I want to continue in it. I'm good at it, and I'm hoping that I can earn your vote in November, or beginning September 23rd with early voting.
Thank you, candidate Schuler and candidate Rest. That concludes the Senate portion of our candidate forum. And we'll now have a brief pause for seating the candidates for state representative for districts 43A and 43B.
I really enjoyed this. This is the most fun I've had.
Good evening. The two candidates for House District 43A and 43B are unopposed. League of Women Voters rules for candidate forums allow unopposed candidates to make a statement about their candidacy. The candidates will speak for up to 4 minutes of their qualifications, experiences, and desire to serve the citizens of their district in the State House of Representatives. There's a timer who will notify you of time remaining at 1 minute, 30 seconds, and stop intervals. You may finish your sentence after the stop sign. Candidate Cedrick Frazier from District 43A will be the first to present his statement. Go ahead, candidate Frazier.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thanks to the League of Minnesota Voters for holding this forum tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity and this moment to speak to the voters out there and share my vision and my experience as to why I should be reelected. When I decided to run 2 years ago, I did so because I believed we needed a leader who had proximity to the issues that required bold and forward-thinking solutions, a representative that would bring a voice backed by lived experiences. I was humbled and honored after voters put their faith in me and sent me to the Capitol to be their representative. When I was elected, I made a promise that I would not just be a yes or no vote. I promised that I would be a strong voice that would speak up and advocate for policies that would benefit my district and every Minnesotan. To that end, as your representative, I have worked hard to address the issues concerning our district. I have been the lead author or supported legislation that will strengthen our schools and eliminate opportunity gaps, provide higher wages for workers, make our communities safer, provide for more affordable housing options, ease the financial burdens of our seniors living on fixed incomes, allow all Minnesotans to have access to quality health care, and that also means access to their reproductive rights. And also, I worked very hard on a bill to honor our frontline workers that put themselves and their families' lives at risk of contracting COVID-19. Our state is one of prosperity and high rankings, but what lies beneath that is also deep systemic inequities. As we continue to climb out of this pandemic, we must remain committed to addressing the issues that were highlighted and laid to bear during the darkest months of the pandemic. I believe we must work hard toward a state that allows everyone to prosper. I believe government can make people's lives better, and therefore government must make people's lives better. That is why I'm running for re-election, and I hope to have your support. Early voting starts tomorrow, September 23rd, and the last day to vote is November 8th. So please exercise your voice, which is your vote in our democracy, and be heard. Again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for allowing me this opportunity to speak to all voters and share with you the reasons why I want to run for re-election. Please go to my website at cedrickfrazier.com for more information about positions and where I stand. And if you'd like to volunteer, please sign up. Thank you all again, and have a good night.
Thank you, candidate Frazier. And now we will hear the statement from candidate Mike Freiberg from District 43B.
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on this event. I'm State Representative Mike Freiberg, and I'm running for re-election. Because of redistricting that happens every 10 years, I'm running for re-election in a slightly different district that includes new areas. The new district number is 43B, and it includes all or parts of Crystal, Golden Valley, Plymouth, and Robbinsdale. I grew up in our area, and I've dedicated my life to public service and to my community. My parents moved to Golden Valley when I was 6 weeks old. They still live in the house I grew up in. With the new district lines, they'll be able to vote for me for the first time since I was on the Golden Valley City Council. I'm married with 2 kids who attend Robbinsdale Public Schools. I've served as a state representative for 10 years, holding a variety of leadership positions, chair of the Preventive Health Policy Division, chair of the Government Operations Committee, and assistant minority leader. I've successfully championed legislation that benefits both Minnesota and our communities. The bills I've authored have included urgent topics such as climate change, transparency in elections, and pandemic response. The legislation was signed into law even though Minnesota has been one of the very few states that has a politically divided legislature. If reelected, there are several issues I'd like to take on. Our public schools are underfunded, our teachers are disrespected. Across the country, school curricula are getting politicized, books are being banned from school libraries, and those with fringe, intolerant views are forcing their beliefs on their communities. This cannot happen in Minnesota. I will make sure schools have the resources they need to thrive, that the teaching profession is respected, and that schools are tolerant, welcoming places for all students. Minnesota also needs to be a leader in tackling the climate crisis. I successfully championed legislation to fund sustainability improvements in state buildings, but we need to do more to encourage sustainable investments and reduce dependence on fossil fuels. We need to address gun violence. I've co-authored legislation to require background checks and prevent dangerous people from doing harm. These common sense measures have wide support among Minnesotans, but a group of legislators beholden to the gun lobby have repeatedly blocked progress. This has to stop. We hear about a new tragedy almost daily. We need to protect the integrity of our elections. I successfully authored legislation to improve election transparency, but the right to vote is under constant attack by needlessly restrictive voting laws. People who deny the very legitimacy of our elections are running for legislative and statewide offices. We need to ensure that everyone has the right to vote free of artificial barriers, that money doesn't play a disproportionate role in our elections, that elections are secure, and that election results are respected. Finally, we need to protect access to reproductive health care, including abortion care. In the Dobbs decision, a reactionary, questionably appointed U.S. Supreme Court overturned 50 years of settled precedent. Although judicial precedent in Minnesota protects abortion care, anti-abortion interests will test this at every turn, just as they did with federal precedent. I won't stop fighting for equal access to reproductive health care for all Minnesotans, including abortion care. I've been knocking on doors and talking to voters since the legislative session ended. I hope we can chat in the coming weeks before the election so I can find out what issues are important to you. If you'd like to learn more about me, you can visit my website, mikefreiberg.com. Thank you once again to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and thank you to everyone watching for your consideration.
Thank you, candidate Freiberg. There's no question section for unopposed candidates, so this concludes our candidate forum. I would like to thank our candidates for their participation in this League of Women Voters candidate forum, as well as our audience for their questions and participation in viewing the candidates.
Give a round of applause for them.
Good job.
We do appreciate your participation, even if it is for a few minutes. I'd like to thank our moderator, Peggy Kvam, the City of New Hope, and CCX Media for presenting this candidate forum. Thank you also to the candidates for your participation. The video of this forum will be posted on ccxmedia.org, on League of Women Voters, the Crystal New Hope East Plymouth Robbinsdale's website and Facebook page, and at vote411.org for online viewing. League of Women posts complete, unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan or political purposes. If a member of our audience believes an issue has not been adequately addressed, League of Women Voters urges you to contact the candidates directly. I want to encourage voters and candidates to utilize vote411.org. Candidates, please fill out the candidate survey, and voters can find out if they are registered, what will be on their ballot, their polling location, and more. As was said, the election is Tuesday, November 8th, and polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The last day to pre-register for the general election is Tuesday, October 18th. You can do this by going to vote411.org or mnvotes.org and follow the prompts. You may also register at the polls on November 8th, Election Day, if you have been a resident of the state for at least 20 days before the election and bring proof of residency. Early absentee voting at city halls and county offices begins tomorrow, Friday, September 23rd. and runs through Monday, November 7th. Check your city hall for exact times. The League of Women Voters encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Membership is open to men and women of all ages, and for more information about League of Women Voters, visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/LWVCNHEPR and at our website lwvcnhepr.org. Thank you. Have a good night.